Hello, I'm Mr. Ingham and I'm going to be telling you about the A-Level Politics course at Beacon Academy. So first of all, what kind of people enjoy and do well in A-Level Politics? It tends to be those people who want to discuss the issues of the day, who enjoy arguing and talking about policies, political parties and current events. Chances are, if you've been following the news over the last couple of years, you will already have a lot of the important contextual background knowledge essential for you to do well on this course. What kind of things do we cover? Well, I'm glad you asked me. Component 1, we look at British politics in year 12, and we evaluate the state of British democracy. So we look at the things that are going right and the things that are going wrong with the UK system. So we pick apart things like the British electoral system. We look at the way the different pressure groups campaign to change government policy in a number of really important areas. We look at recent British elections, and we look at voting behaviour, why people vote the way they do, and why they refuse to vote in other ways. We look at different electoral systems, and we look at voting behaviour and the media. So the effect that not only newspapers and TV have a massive effect on British politics, but we also look at the effect of social media on the changing UK system. We also look at core political ideas in component 1, and that is an in-depth look at 3 different areas: conservatism, socialism and liberalism. And we look at how these 3 different ideologies shape different political parties and different ways of thinking about the world. You get to look at this stuff in quite a lot of depth, seeing the difference between things such as revolutionary communism and modern political parties such as Labour that take on some of the traditions of socialism without necessarily wanting to have an armed revolution. Similarly, we look at differences within conservatism. So the difference between one nation conservatism and Thatcherism, or the New Right. Component 2, we look at government. We see how the world works. So you look at the way that Parliament works, what kind of constitution Britain has. You look at the Prime Minister and the Executive. So what powers do they really have? Who runs this place? We look at relationships between the different institutions. So the difference between the House of Commons, the House of Lords, the devolved parliaments. And we've got a non-core political thought unit that we include in component 2, which is feminism, which is something that everybody should know, the different waves of feminism, and not only the struggle for rights in the past, but the ongoing struggle for equality nowadays. And that is your year 12 curriculum. It shows you how this country works. There's so many things that you can bring into this. If you're watching the TV news one evening, or you're listening to something online, you can actually bring that to the next lesson, and we will have a discussion about it. That it's quite possible that you will be using things that you've picked up through watching the news. You'll be using this stuff within the essays, within the formal written work, because the best work tends to be really rooted in the here and now. You use examples from what's actually going on in the world around you. So in the last lesson, 2 of the students had quite an argument about the current government's handling of the coronavirus crisis, and the difference in opinions is excellent. It makes for a really interesting class where you've got people willing to justify their opinions, but to actually disagree with each other and have to find examples to actually prove what they're saying. It's quite lively. People generally do politics because they either have firm opinions or they want to find out more about the world around them. So, what do we look at in Year 13? Well, in Year 13, we look at American government and politics. So we look at the way that the American system works and sometimes doesn't work, and we compare it to the British system. But we look in quite a lot of depth at the American Constitution and federalism, the way that Congress operates, or sometimes doesn't, the way that the American presidency works in the way it does. We look at the reasons why the Constitution really hampers the way the current president can operate. We look at American elections, we look at the Supreme Court and civil rights issues. So we'll be looking at things such as Black Lives Matter and affirmative action projects in America. You get to look at America in quite a lot of depth, and because of the massive differences to the UK system, it is an incredible story when you actually look at the way that their system is developed and why it works in the way it does. It is so different to the UK system, but it's quite understandable. And again, you will have picked up some of the contextual knowledge vital for that course just through keeping up to date with the news. The stuff that's going on at the moment with the US election and the various debates and Donald Trump's attempts at controlling the crisis, it is totally relevant to the academic course you would be doing. And we look in depth at these comparisons between the different countries, and that is the A-level politics curriculum. It's really, really interesting. There's loads of room for disagreement and arguing. You will always be finding out new things because the nature of the subject is it has to be up to date. Now, the written work that is required for it is fairly mixed in terms of source material and more extended written work. It's totally examined rather. And the essays in the exam tend to be 40 minutes as the longest ones that you would need to do. But actually, people find that there's so much they can write about in answering any of the questions that actually the length of essay really doesn't tend to be a problem for most people. The course requirements, you don't need to have studied any particular subject in the past. The standards of literacy really are the only entry requirement, where we would generally be looking at English GCSE of roughly 5. But again, if somebody is so enthusiastic about the subject of politics, I'd be willing to have that discussion with them. Now, if you need to ask any questions about the politics course, please feel free to ask either myself, Mr. Ingham, or Mrs. Kennedy in the history department, and we'll be only too happy to help you. I hope you found this talk useful, and if not, I hope to see you in September then. Goodbye.